Welcome to our discussion on how um, John Calvin's ideas really uh, shook things up from the 16th century all the way to today's America.
I'm excited to dig into this. So, the big idea, it's all about, predestination, right?
Exactly. So, Calvin's core claim was that before the world even began, God decided who would be saved and who, well,
Mm-hmm.
be condemned, and it wasn't based on anything we did, like our faith or merits.
Wait, so you're saying no matter what you do, your fate's sealed from the start?
Yep, that's exactly it. It's like it's like you're born with a predetermined destiny, and no amount of hard work can change that outcome. You know, hard-hitting stuff.
That's pretty intense. It's almost as if you're predetermined to just, well, be a pawn in this divine game.
Right. And it gets even more chilling when you delve into what's called double predestination.
Yep.
Calvin argued that not only does God choose some for salvation, but he actively condemns others.
So it's a two-for-one deal, selecting the saved and effectively writing off the rest?
Exactly. It's like a cosmic clearance sale where only a select few items get the premium tag, while the others are, well, destined for eternal damnation.
Mm-hmm.
And all of this was set in stone, or should I say, in divine decree, before you even started breathing.
Wow, that's not just theology. That's almost a kind of, total control over human destiny.
Right. And speaking of control, think about Geneva, where Calvin himself reigned. The atmosphere there was less about personal faith and more like a police state of religious discipline. People had to be super careful
Yeah.
about their behavior because any slip-up could signal that you weren't among the elect.
So in Geneva, it wasn't just preaching. It was like the government, the church, and the law were all in cahoots to, enforce this theology.
Absolutely. The Genevan consistory functioned almost like a moral inquisition. Citizens were constantly watching each other, and they were driven by this anxiety that their every action could mark them as unworthy.
I can't help but think, doesn't that kind of intense surveillance and pressure um, lead to a very stifling society?
It sure did, and that's one of the most debated aspects of Calvinism. It's like, um, in trying to enforce a pure community, they ended up fostering
Right.
fear and isolation. It makes you wonder about the balance between conviction and coercion, doesn't it?
Exactly. There's a lot to challenge there. And what about the tulip framework? That, I believe, is a cornerstone of Calvinist thought post his time, right?
Yes. Tulip neatly encapsulates the 5 points. Let me break it down. Total depravity shows that humans are completely tainted by sin. Unconditional election means God picks whom to save without any prerequisites. Limited atonement suggests Christ's sacrifice was only for the elect. Irresistible grace assures that those chosen will indeed come to salvation, and perseverance of the saints means once saved,
Uh-huh.
always saved. It's like every door is locked tight with no room for human choice.
That's a very rigorous system. But isn't it a bit harsh to say that so little room is left for free will?
That's been the crux of the debate, for sure. And hold on, because Jacobus Arminius started a counter-argument suggesting that predestination should actually consider human choice and foreseen faith. His ideas, which bubbled into what we know as Arminianism, propose that our free will plays a role after all.
Right. So essentially, Arminius said, hey, maybe God doesn't just, decide our fate independently of our actions. Yeah.
Exactly. And his influence didn't just stop in Europe. It seeped over to America, carried by the Puritans who saw themselves as God's elect, chosen to create a holy commonwealth.
Mm-hmm.
This belief really underscored American culture, especially the idea that financial success and hard work were signs that perhaps you were among the blessed.
So, in a sense, Calvinism helped shape this American narrative that equates hard work with divine favor, even if indirectly.
Right on. It's like the notion of the self-made man, achieving success as a mark of, moral and spiritual virtue. Sociologist Max Weber even connected that to the development of what we now see as the spirit of
Yep,
capitalism. Fascinating how theology and economics get all intertwined, isn't it?
absolutely. And fast forward to modern times, we see a new resurgence called New Calvinism. Figures like John Piper, Tim Keller, and R.C. Sproul have, taken these classic ideas and reintroduced them to, say, megachurch audiences.
Exactly. They've revitalized the message without necessarily spotlighting the scary parts like predestination, but underneath, the same logic, God's absolute control over destiny,
Yeah.
remains. It's like a modern remix of a centuries-old doctrine.
And then we have the pushback from theologians who, well, question these very ideas. I recall names like Clark Pinnock and Greg Boyd, who argue for open theism, saying that the future isn't fixed and that human freedom still plays a huge part.
Right? They suggest that God might know all possibilities, but the future isn't carved in stone. And then there's Karl Barth, who reinterpreted predestination to include everyone through Jesus. It presents a truly more inclusive view of salvation, which is a stark contrast to Calvin's exclusive framework.
I find that really compelling. While Calvinism lays down a rigid determinism, the idea that everyone could eventually be redeemed sounds a lot more hopeful, don't you think?
I do. But it's also fair to note that the original Calvinist views have had a profound impact culturally and politically. For instance, the confident certainty behind the elect has, in many ways, become intertwined with identity politics in some American evangelical circles. This has even spilled over into debates and policies today.
Exactly. It's almost as if the ghost of Calvin's theology is reflected in modern political ideologies. The idea that our nation has a divine destiny, or that our opponents simply aren't chosen by God.
Right. And that has major implications for how people see moral authority and even justify certain acts. It's a theology that, as historian Marilyn Robinson put it, carries unimaginable grandeur and terrifying intimacy. It still sparks heated debates.
And speaking of debates, don't you think it's a bit problematic when such a deterministic view influences, political decision-making that could affect entire groups of people?
Absolutely, that's a valid point to challenge. When you say that the idea of predestination might justify exclusion or oppression, you're touching on one of the darker legacies of this doctrine. Even if some argue it merely provides comfort or certainty, it has also served to reinforce divisions, both socially and politically. It really forces us to ask, does a loving God truly create some just to condemn them?
That's a question that strikes at the heart of the debate. It compels us to reflect not only on theology, but on, ethics and the kind of society we want to build today.
Right. Future-oriented debates on free will versus divine control might define how inclusive our society becomes. And, while Calvin's views have historically been powerful, many modern reinterpretations strive to balance divine sovereignty with human responsibility. It's a conversation as old as time, yet more relevant than ever.
It seems the very idea that our fate is predestined can have, ripple effects in personal responsibility, political ideologies, and even economic systems.
Absolutely. From the anxiety of the Geneva experiment, where moral panic shaped daily life, to the modern revival influencing megachurches and political rhetoric, Calvin's theology has, in many ways, been predestined to leave its mark on Western thought.
And in that light, exploring these doctrines helps us understand not just religious history, but also our present cultural landscape.
Exactly. It's a reminder that these intense ideas, as chilling as they may seem, provide historical context to the ways we understand fate, choice, and ultimately, the human condition. They force us to ask the tough questions even today.
And that, I think, is why conversations like these are so important. They urge us to reflect on how past doctrines inform our present and shape our future choices.
Indeed. Thanks for joining in on this deep dive. There's always more beneath the surface with these theological debates, more questions, more challenges, and always room to explore how ancient ideas still resonate.
Absolutely. Till next time, let's keep questioning and exploring.